Our next film takes a cruise through history as Riley explains the national and local connection to the Titanic disaster.
Hey Canada, what's up? My name is Riley DeYoung, and today I'm going to be telling you about Titanic, the Canadian connection. You might even learn a little bit about my city. Let's go! Titanic is a large part of Canadian history, larger than you might think. That's why it's so important we talk about it. There were 82 passengers traveling to Canada. I've chosen 3 families. Let's see what we can find out. I will now begin with my third-class story about 24-year-old Patrick Colbert. Patrick Colbert lived in a town in Ireland at a railway station and worked with trains like this. He decided he was going to move to Sherbrooke, Quebec to be a monk with his brother. Conditions in third class were pretty bad, but for 1912 they were considered pretty great. How would you like to live in a cabin with 4 other strangers, with cages blocking off the hallways so you couldn't go to other parts of the ship? This was Patrick's reality. Patrick passed away on the Titanic. His body was never identified. It's possible it could have been buried in Fairview Cemetery in Halifax, where the majority of unidentified bodies were laid to rest. His parents were proud. Patrick was moving away to Canada to become a monk, and he could have changed Canada's history in amazing ways. Instead, he changed Canada's history in a different way. I will now move on to my second-class story about the Hart family from London. There were 3 members of the Hart family: Benjamin Hart, who was 43, his wife Esther, who was 45, and their daughter Eva, who was 7. And they were moving here, to Winnipeg. Esther never felt safe on the Titanic, and because of her anxiety, she never slept during the night on the ship. And it just so happens one of these nights, Titanic was sinking. Eva and Esther survived and moved back to London, where Eva lived out the rest of her days. And on February 14th, 1996, Eva passed away, leaving 8 remaining Titanic survivors. Finally, the last family I will be telling you about is the Fortune family, who lived right here. There were 8 members of the Fortune family, but only 6 went on the Titanic. There was Mark Fortune, who was 64, his wife Mary, who was 60, and the 4 children, Ethel, who was 28, Alice, who was 24, Mabel, who was 23, and Charles, who was 18. Mark was very wealthy, and he built his family this house in 1911. A year later, in 1912, he gave his family a 6-month European trip. After their trip and time on the Titanic, Mark and Charles passed away in the disaster. The women came back to Winnipeg, and Mary lived out the rest of her days here. However, the women were not the only one who survived the Titanic. The story of the disaster came back with them, and to commemorate them, the city of Winnipeg named streets after the men that were lost. Fortune Street after Mark and Charles Fortune, Borbank Street after J.J. Borbank, and Hugo Street after John Hugo Roth. In conclusion, Titanic has many connections to Canada and my own city of Winnipeg. I hope you learned a little bit about today of our history and got to see some pretty famous attractions. All in all, these are stories that make up Titanic, the Canadian connection.
Coming up, Tisha explains how one Canadian woman changed the way all females are treated.
And I want to introduce you to an interesting woman back in 1873. Her name is Nellie McClung. She is responsible for women's right to vote in Manitoba. Let's go back in time and tell the tale of Nellie McClung. Nellie McClung was born on October 17, 1873 on a farm near Chatsworth, Ontario. She was the youngest daughter of John Mooney, an Irish immigrant farmer and Methodist, and his Scottish-born wife, Letitia McCurdy. In 1880, Nellie and her family moved to a farm near Walmanessa, Manitoba. She began formal schooling at the age of 10. Although it was frowned upon, Nellie loved playing football. Her favorite subject was algebra. In September 1889, when Nellie was not quite 16, she began normal school. At the end of January 1890, Nellie received her second teaching certificate. She was the second youngest student. Nellie then moved to teach at Hazel School, 3 miles north of Manitou. In 1892, Nellie moved to Manitou, Manitoba, where she met and married Robert Wesley McClung, a pharmacist, whom she raised her 5 children with: Jack, Mark, Horace, Florence, and Paul McClung. In 1911, they moved to rural Manitoba and then to Winnipeg. Before becoming a mother, Nellie joined a religious group called the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Nellie then quit her job as a teacher and became an activist and writer. In 1908, her first book published was Sewing Season Danny. It became a national bestseller, the first of her many successes. Nellie is most remembered for her fight to get women the vote. In 1912, Nellie became a founding member of the Political Equality League. On January 28, 1914, a mock parliament was staged which turned the tables. The subject of debate was whether or not men should have the vote. The play was very effective. On January 29, 1916, Manitoba was the first province to grant women the right to vote. Nellie wrote to Prime Minister Mackenzie King congratulating him on becoming Prime Minister. Her letter included the suggestion that it was time women were appointed to the Senate and that Emily Murphy would be an excellent choice. The Persons case became another challenge for Nellie. Women in Canada could not be appointed to the Canadian Senate because they were not considered to be persons under the British North America Act. 5 Canadian women disputed this claim: Nellie McClung, Emily Murphy, Henrietta Edwards, Irene Parlby, and Louise McKinney, also known as the Famous Five, took this case to the Privy Council of Great Britain, which in those days was Canada's highest court. The Privy Council overturned the decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, and on October 18, 1929, a landmark legal decision for Canadian women was made when women were legally recognized as persons under the British common law. Nellie once said, and I quote, "I want to leave something behind when I go. Some small legacy of truth, some world that will shine in a dark place. People must know the past to understand the present and to face the future." With all the challenges that women face today, how will you make a difference?
I'm here with Tisha. She's going to tell us more about her film. What surprised you about your topic?
That Nellie McClung got the right for women to vote.
Why did you choose Nellie McClung?
I chose Nellie McClung because I thought that women should remember that women got the right to vote.
Thanks, Tisha. And thank everyone for watching Canada's history through the eyes of a young citizen. For more information about the project, visit youngcitizens.ca.